Hi, Erin.
Welcome, everyone. If you're here, we're going to get started in a few minutes and have a great discussion today. It's just cool to see your theater, Erin.
Yeah, it is in operation right now. We've got some technicians at the soundboard over there, and then some other guys are setting up our stage. We start production next week.
Is it weird to be back in a theater, Erin?
We've actually been back in. We've been in 5 days a week since August. So, no. Yeah, we haven't had all of our kids, but like faculty and staff have been in the building full time since professional development days in August. So sadly, it's not weird.
So you actually would prefer to be on vacation at this point?
Oh, I would take it. I would accept it for sure.
Fair. We're still loading folks in. So for those of you who are just joining us, we'll get on this in a few minutes. We're just waiting for folks to come on into the conference room. We're about 2 minutes before the start time.
Shall we be really on time? It's 3 o'clock Eastern time. And Hunter, take it away.
So welcome, everybody. So glad to have all of you here today. My name is Hunter Arnold. I'm a Broadway producer. I'm also one of the founders of On the Stage. And we're super grateful to have you here talking about sort of how to use technology, not just in this interim period of COVID and dealing with sort of how to stream things and present things and extend your audience reach using technology, but also we're here to talk about what sort of technology will represent in the space of live theater once we kind of come back from all of this, because I think finally in the last few weeks, we're starting to see some signs of life in terms of the light at the end of the tunnel, and everybody's starting to plan for, all right, so what's the next iteration going to be? And if there's one thing that I know about theater people, it's that we are resilient, that it's tough to keep us down. And at the end of the day, we're going to take a crisis, or we're going to take a challenge and wrap our arms around it and use it in a way to take this beautiful art form that has existed since really the dawn of human civilization in many permutations, and kind of take it to the next level. So on behalf of On the Stage, which is a company that we founded about 5 years ago, based on the idea that live theater deserved to have the same level of best-in-class technology. You know, theater's a small industry in terms of its economic impact when you compare it to sort of the rest of the industries that technology services. And as a Broadway producer, I got a little tired of the fact that we always sort of got someone else's technology with like 3 rolls of duct tape and a couple of wire coat hangers, and like then they kind of made it vaguely work for us. And I said to a couple of my partners, including Shane Naughton, who's not on this call, I think it's time for us to create some software and some technology for theater makers that actually lives in their wheelhouse and recognizes what they do, and we give people the tools. And so at On the Stage, we're super happy to have created an end-to-end software that can help everybody from ticketing to online promotion to streaming to customer interaction to audience development and all those things in between. And we really strive on a day-to-day basis to continue to improve our tools to service all of you. And one of those tools that has really come to fruition through this COVID thing is not just being able to share theater live and in the moment, but being able to take live performances of theater right now that may not be able to have an audience present, and actually serve them up on demand on top of it, so that people who can't make it at the moment or can't make it at a specific timeline can still enjoy that performance, particularly when the audiences can't be in the room. And we spend a lot of time looking at what that's going to do in terms of audience expansion after this whole nightmare, frankly, for those of us that create live theater is over. You know, are we going to have technologies that allow someone's aunt that lives 6 states over and never would have been able to make the High School Musical? Will that aunt be able to participate in that experience, on Saturday afternoon when she does have the time off, and not on Thursday night at 8 p.m. when she's working a shift at the hospital or whatever it is that they do. So video on demand is kind of our latest rollout. We're super proud of it, but today's conversation is really about the whole panoply of offerings that we have, about the technology solutions that we have, and helping those of you that are on this call figure out between now and when things feel normal, and then after things feel normal and until things feel new normal, what are the tools that you can use to help promote and expand your theatrical universe? And I feel very grateful today. I'm going to do a little housekeeping in a few moments, but I've got three great folks with us. I've got Tina Cucumeli, who works in development at My Theatrical business, but who was an educator for over 40 years, teaching live theater. We have Erin Bogad, who runs one of the most, I would say, advanced thinking, sort of not even leading edge, maybe even bleeding edge organizations when it comes to combining theater and technology. And then we have Tyler Newhouse, who runs my company, TBD Creative, which is a film company, who sort of is here as an expert on the technologies and tools. And don't let technologies and tools intimidate you. Those are very simple things you probably already have in your purview that you can use to share your theater with the world and expand your audience well beyond the walls of your local community or your school's community or your regional community. Before I hand it over to Tina, who's going to sort of guide us through the conversation today, I would just like to say that if you have a question, or if you want one of us to respond to a query that you have, try to throw it in the Q&A. The Q&A function on Zoom lets us keep track of what the questions are much better than the chat does. We can see you in chat, but if chat gets sort of busy, it's very difficult to keep track of things. So click that Q&A button, and one of us will pick up that question and answer it live. We also have a lot of support members and staff members of the On the Stage team on this call right now. And so if there's something that's a very personal question, specific to your organization or whatnot, we'll make sure that we have folks in both the chat and the Q&A that can pick up your question and interact with you one-on-one, whether it's on this call or before this call, to make sure that you get the answers you need. But before I turn it over, I'd just like to say we're super grateful for all of you that have taken the time to be with us today. Making theater over the last 11 months or so has been a real challenge. And as someone who benefits from the entire ecosystem, from community through educational, through amateur, through regional, through developmental, and all the way up to the Broadway and West End world that I spend a lot of my days in, we're all in this thing together. And without those of you that are on this call making theater and teaching the next generation and taking things forward, none of us would have anything to present to the world. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today. And we're looking forward to helping you through your technological and structural questions. And with that, I will kick it over to Tina so that you can have some articulation 6 minutes into this call, as opposed to just a rambling guy with a hat on.
Thanks, Hunter. That was an inspirational introduction. Thank you. I want to assure everyone who's on the call that if you sent a question into us, as we asked you to when you signed up for the webinar, we've tried to integrate that into the conversation and the questions with our professionals today. Also, this is being recorded, so any of your friends or colleagues who are not able to be on it because of their schedules today, of course, we'll be sharing it with you. And that also saves you from having to madly take notes when Hunter and Tyler and Erin start. I know I would, be trying to get it all written down. You'll have access to that. So it's really exciting to have people from three really different points of view. I'm going to start out with a really general question, and that is kind of riffing off of what Hunter was just talking about. Obviously, the current state of theater productions looks very different from how things were done pre-COVID. We've talked about that in all of our webinars recently. And also, as Hunter shared, how things are going to look in the future. That hopefully we're not just going to sink back into what we were doing, but take advantage of what we've learned and move on. So to all three of you, how do theater directors, leaders, filmmakers, in your case, Tyler, who have become theater makers by necessity, how do you grapple with these shifts in what's gone on. And Aaron, why don't we start with you and maybe talking a bit about who we're serving?
Sure. I mean, that to jump right into it, that is sort of the gist of all of the work. And frankly, it starts, those of us who've been doing this a while, you've been doing the same work, and honestly, a lot of it changed, but a lot of it didn't. The question of who we're serving and what is the purpose behind what we're doing has always been and should continue to be the driver for my company, at least. And when I say my company, I'm referring to Salesianum School Theater, which is we're an all boys Catholic school in Wilmington, Delaware. We've got 1,100 boys. We work with 2 sister schools also in Wilmington, and so we have a sort of internal company, and that company, as it were, has been operating in service of like the experience of our participating students for as long as I've been here. And this is my 6th year here. Prior to that, I was at the Hunt School of Princeton, where I basically did the same thing, established an internal company there. And that's all based on the experience of being prior to in the world of education, sort of coming into the like downtown theater scene in New York in the early 2000s and kind of working in every gross basement bar theater in the village. And building this community of weirdos that was like super exciting to work with. And then at a certain point, my wife who was an attorney, got a federal clerkship, and we had to move to Trenton. And so it was about find a gig. And there was a school that was hiring, and they had a nice theater, and they were going to let me do whatever I wanted in it, as long as kids were learning something. And I was like, oh, okay, I could do this. And now almost 20 years later, I've been a teacher for such a long time. It's always been in service of the community of weirdos that we find ourselves in and operating within the strengths of that community. So frankly, while COVID obviously sucks on so many levels, it has been the privilege of our work to continue to try to serve the needs of that community of weirdos, of makers, of artists, and like activating them and training them and letting them train us in how to best kind of face the environment. I mean, that's really what it's been like, at least from my experience thus far.
Yeah,
So the
I'll jump in.
focus you're talking, go ahead, Hunter.
No, what I was going to totally agree with what Aaron said and say, like, yeah, there have been parts of this thing that have been very not fun, but also theater, because it is such an ancient art form, which is like a great privilege to be a part of. It also means that we don't always embrace and advance with the speed of what the world now and technology allows us to. And I'm going to brag on Aaron for a moment. And in all fairness, let's just be clear. I think Aaron and I've known each other since we were in our teens, if not below. But like, he has been pushing for the inclusivity and access of things like streaming for years. And that's not just a battle with things like licensors and publishers. It's not just a battle with technology companies. It's not just an educational curvature with the at-home audience. It's not just an audience interaction experience. I mean, that is truly somebody, Aaron, and many other people around this country that believe that theater should be accessible to every person within a community, and that theater is an important live part of our experience. And so, like, to me, yes, the economic pain of COVID, certainly at the commercial level and at the regional and community level, where I've watched organizations struggle to be surviving in this modality, it is also an opportunity. There's a silver lining there, which is that things that the leaders like Aaron in this industry have been pushing for years, suddenly people have to listen to. And for better or for worse, in the theater, sometimes it takes us having things taken away and finding new solutions to actually contemporize us and to get us into this moment. So I think that he's right. Like, we've always been serving our communities, our players, those that put the show up, and most importantly, our audiences. And that doesn't change whether you're distributing your product in a 99-seat downtown theater. It doesn't change if you're distributing your product without a single audience member over a streaming platform. In the end, art is made to make people think and to move people and to create change and conversation. And if anything, today, we're at a point where, I was looking at a statistic the other day where if you looked, I'm going to make this up and don't quote me on the numbers, but there was a chart of the age groups, the demographic age groups that preferred online transactions. And in December of 2019, it was like this. And then at 62 years old, it went like that, off a cliff. And there was a generation of folks that were like, I don't really want my credit card to be online. I've never really ordered something from Amazon. That's not the modality that, like, I'd rather go like hold the thing and know that I want to buy it. And then COVID happened, right? And now you look at a chart of who prefers online ordering, and it's pretty much a straight line to the low 90s. And that change is permanent, and that change will stay with us long after this crisis, because what it did was it made comfortable and normalized these technologies that frankly have been around for 15 or 20 years. And while streaming and bandwidth have gotten better, if you translate to that to the theater, they've really been there all along. Aaron, when was the first time you streamed a show to an at-home audience?
I was just about to sort of like jump in and point that out. Yeah. The first show that I streamed to anyone outside of our building was in 2008, where I had a student who's, it was a partial boarding school where I was working, and his entire family was in China, and they were not going to come to see the musical. And it was about how do we get this kid's family access? And so it became a really personal question. And I think that that's an important thing to recognize, is that when we're making these technology choices, it's always in service of the personalities and the humans with whom we're working. And so to serve this kid who was in this production in 2008, it meant me using, my personal camcorder and connecting it to my laptop and just like opening up a chat window. And it was awful sound and it was awful video, but this kid's family in China got to see it, right? I'm sure it was violating whatever rights agreement I had at the time, but to me, frankly, it's always been worth the risk to do that, to serve the community of weirdos that I'm in, right? The needs of the kids trumped the need of that contract in that moment, I guess. But yeah, so it's been a long time, and the technology is great as it's gotten better, but it's always been about how do we get this experience to the widest group, and not necessarily in terms of distribution, right? It's not about how many eyes can we get on the product. It's about how many human connections can we get into our process? Because at the end of the day, especially with high school theater, and all the teachers out there are going to recognize this, nobody is seeing our stuff or watching our content for the quality of the entertainment. They're seeing our stuff and watching our content for the quality of the experience of their loved one who is involved. And if the quality of entertainment is high, as for most of us, I'm sure it is, that's a great extra, but that's not the driver, right? The driver is about how do I get myself or my kid to connect to this thing that is the reason they want to go to school. The reason they miss being in the building is because of that thing. How do I get that back, right? And that's all about knowing your constituency and your audience really well.
I want to bring Tyler in on this, because for a lot of the people who are on the call, educators, small community theaters, bigger community theaters, what's really happened is, I said, when I talked about Tyler earlier, filmmakers have become theater makers have become filmmakers. And so Tyler, maybe you can talk a little bit about the merging of those two storytelling devices. I know you're a professional filmmaker, so as simple as you can make it, storytelling through these merged art forms.
Sure. I have worked the better part of this past decade as a professional filmmaker and as a commercial film director, but I got my start learning how to make films by watching YouTube videos, So the first thing that I would say to people who are all of a sudden realizing that they are not only theater makers, but they are now having to be filmmakers because they cannot have butts in seats, and all of a sudden they have to wear a completely new set of hats, it's terrifying, but as Hunter said, there is a great silver lining here. And we are also very lucky that the technology has progressed to a point where we can spread our images around the globe, but we also have the resources to learn and to teach ourselves. And, if you have the drive to try and learn how to be a filmmaker, those resources are out there for you to go and figure it out. In terms of merging film and theater, I think a lot of people want sort of the secret sauce answer to, like, where do I put the camera to make it look like you're in the theater, as if I told you that it's the 15th row, center orchestra, and all of a sudden that's the spot that makes you feel like, and the reality is that at the end of the day, you have to remember that you're still a storyteller. And the story is what has to drive all of your decisions, whether you are putting on a piece of art for people who are going to be physically in that space with you, or it's streaming out to them in their homes. And so the answer is that you have to, you have to put on a bit of your filmmaker hat, but that is not any different than your theater maker hat at its core essence, which is that you are a storyteller and you're there to serve the story. And so, you need to drive ahead first with the story in mind. And that's going to tell you whether you want to shoot the whole show sitting back wide in the theater, or whether you need to find ways to get that camera up and make it feel like we are immersive, because that's what the story is asking. It wants you to be on the stage with your actors. There is not going to be any right answer here, but if you always drive forward trying to serve the story, you will come to those right places.
So that takes us to probably the question a lot of people are waiting to be asked. It was a lot of the early questions we got. Making use of what you have. So assuming that you don't have like thousands and thousands of dollars to go out and buy new equipment to do this, I think I'll start with you again, Aaron, just because I think you rattled off for us a hilarious list of what you are currently using to shoot your show. And I think it'll give our attendees a little flavor of what they have that they don't even know they could be using right now.
Totally. Yeah, so we, the show that we're working on right now, we're doing She Kills Monsters, just like everybody else in America. And it's, we're gonna be shooting starting next week. And we will be using the little cameras that school has given us to be webcams for running our Zoom lessons. We will be using a Kinect camera from Xbox, the video game that is sort of like where it tracks you so you can do like exercising with your Xbox in theory. We are using effectively like a Ring doorbell level technology camera where they're like security cameras from the security system the school was decommissioned, and we got all those old cameras, so we have those cameras which are interesting and give an interesting look. We're using some late 90s era camcorders running through a lot of different converters because the show takes place in the 90s and we wanted a kind of like janky VHS feel without having to put like that Instagram filter on it. We are using phones. We are using, also my favorite camera is, we were really, really lucky that we built a really beautiful football stadium in the past year. And there is a really, really rad camera on top of the press box over there that the athletic department bought, that when there is nothing happening in that football stadium, we were able to borrow and bring the super HD 4K beautiful camera into the theater and use that. So it's been about not just finding like what's in the tech graveyard, it's also been about talking to the kids about who's got an Xbox with a Kinect that their brother doesn't use anymore that they can bring in. On our previous production, we used a baby monitor camera, which was cool because we're able to embed it into a set piece and really hide it really well. I think the lower tech you go on your list, the more cameras you'll find. And then it's just about figuring out like how many different cables you need to plug it into a computer.
How do the kids fit into that really?
They're native with it. They know it already. There is zero learning curve for them, right? When I'm dealing with high school students, so there is a bit of an advantage there that a lot of them are the tech wizards of their homes. So they're already doing it for their parents and their grandparents. And it's, how do we get this, how did we get Aunt Susie's Zoom birthday party to work? Well, here's how we did it, right? And so they've been problem solving a lot. So it's really about trusting and leaning on them. And it's been really interesting and fun to have them come through with new ideas and with like, how do we take what feels like broken gear, give it to them to play with and figure out how to make it work.
So Tina, can I jump in for a second? So I want to take a topic that's popping off in both Q&A and in chat, which are two things. One, people being like, well, what are the permissions or the licensing rules that we need or the rights that we have to have? And two is like, hey, Aaron sounds like a genius, but I don't understand any of those things and I don't know what to do with it. Here's the reality. I challenge anybody on this call to tell me that you have a company of actors of any age, whether it's community, regional, educational, professional, where you don't have two people with an iPhone. And I'm just speaking for us at On the Stage. I'm not talking about some of the sort of cutting edge stuff that Aaron does that are about like the look and feel or the stuff that Tyler's talking about that give like, what is the right camera work and what it like, how do you match the camera choreography or stylize to the subject matter? I'm talking about, can I get my theater into the household of people that are missing theater? Or can I get my theater post-COVID into the household of people who don't have access to theater? Because accessibility is a massive, massive, massive problem in the American theater system. If you've got one or two company members with an iPhone, if you use a soundboard in any construct, basically there's somebody at the On the Stage team. So for people that are like, well, where do we get the help? Or what are the, like, somebody on this call right now in about 30 minutes or less can teach you how to link those things together with pre-existing technology. It is not scary. Aaron's point is exactly correct. You probably have somebody in your facility that's like, whoa, this is like the easiest thing ever. They're probably not the person that you usually rely on to distribute your product. It might be the kid that's helping build your sets. It might be somebody in the box office, but you have somebody of an age group that understands how these technologies sort of like build a chain of communication, and they will be able to click into this. We are happy to help you identify that person. We are happy to help you identify how easy this is. But basically you could have one iPhone and a soundboard, and you could deliver a theatrical experience to somebody who, whether through COVID or through personal circumstance, through location, through illness, through whatever, could not be in that theater that day. And frankly, as theater makers, it is our job to bring the storytelling that Aaron and Tyler are talking about to anybody that wants access to it. It's not our job to deliver theater to the people that can easily get their car and drive or drop them off with their $599 premium tickets. Don't get me wrong, I love those people. But our job is actually to like expand this thing so that storytelling impacts the greatest number of people that we possibly can. It's not worth telling a story if you don't want it to land on a lot of ears and hearts and minds. So these things are not intimidating unless you let them be. And I would argue that there are organizations like ours, you know, our CEO is not on the call. I mean, he's on the call, but he's not on video right now, Ryan Bush. And we talk all the time about the fact that like we're a mission-driven organization. Are we for profit? Sure. Would we like to make money? Yes. At the end of the day, will we do anything in our power to help an organization that is struggling to create access in a challenging time, or struggling to create access to a constituency that doesn't have it traditionally? You know, we do big shows that are multi-million dollars that we're streaming to people who are casting on smart TVs with Dolby surround sound. And then we do shows that are like a 28-seat theater that can't operate during COVID, that just needs to get a single camera stream to the audience of people. That entire spectrum weighs exactly the same. It's all just storytelling. And there are a lot of folks in this environment that have said, like, it just seems too hard. And I get the intimidation factor, but the reality is it's quite simple. So again, we can't possibly on a call that's 60 minutes long educate you on how to get your organization structured that way. What we can say is, please buy into the fact that during COVID, you can keep communicating with an audience, and post-COVID, you can communicate with a vastly wider and more accessible audience than you ever had prior to this, and lean on people. And by the way, now Ryan will get mad at me when I say this, I don't care what company you use. I don't care what technology you use. I don't care if you're linking an iPhone through our Switcher Studio setup or if you're custom shooting things and you've got 14 steady cams, or if you're using a baby monitor. It doesn't matter to me. The question is, who can you lean on? And the people on this call are saying, lean on us. But the theater, the thing I love about our community more than anything else is that we don't take no for an answer, right? I mean, you can look at, there's a lot of historical situations where people lose a space, so they do a show in a park, or a licensor tells you can't do something, so people go find something in public domain and deliver it. Like, I don't want to be pushing boundaries here, but I would say that theater lives in a world of ask for forgiveness, not permission. And the licensors of anybody, and by the way, there's a couple I can see our attendees, so I know who's on from some of the licensing companies, and I say to them in private, so I'll now say to them in public. I get that the licensing companies are struggling to adapt to this new era. But there's one thing in struggling to adapt, because you need legal and you need accounting and you need people, and like artists need to get paid, and people deserve to get paid for their work to be distributed. All that stuff matters. But at the end of the day, if the answer is we haven't figured it out yet, so stop making theater, it's an unacceptable answer. So I'll just tell you right now, sorry, Ryan, I'll do it out of the other company, not our company. Anybody that figures out how to deliver theater across a streaming platform that gets sued by a licensor, I'll pay for your legal bills. I'll take care of things. We can't have a world where people are afraid to create community and afraid to create art and thought because it takes us 6 or 12 months to figure out what the structure looks like. We have to have people that are like, how do we deliver this to our audience? Things that Aaron's been doing for 12 years. And it might have started with one family, but I would imagine that by now there's hundreds of families that probably tune in to things that he's doing. It takes time to build that, but there is no excuse in an industry that is created on the idea of community and collaboration. If you don't know how to do it, or if you're terrified of doing it, that's okay. That's normal. It's scary to do new stuff. But we're a community and we exist in a space of collaboration. So lean on the people, whether it's this panel, whether it's this company, or whether it's anyone else in any other part of this industry. Lean on people that can help guide you, listen to the best practices, get out there and try it. Get out there and try it, because it's not as intimidating as you think.
Tyler, I think you're next up answering a specific question there.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback quickly on what Hunter was saying, which is, the thing that I have learned doing this professionally is that even making, $1 million things, nobody really knows what they're doing. And when you get to the point when you can admit that you have no idea what you're doing, you get so much more done. The best thing I ever did in my life was time after time after time say, yeah, I know how to do that, to things that I had absolutely no idea how to do, no qualification for doing, and just figured it out. And once you can get to the place where you live in that world, you will open up so many more doors for yourself. So, I know that there have been a lot of specific questions about using technology, right? And about worrying about the cameras that you have access to, the mics that you have access to, all of that. It's wonderful to have great toys to play with, but if you are creative in the way in which you use things, there is nothing that will stop you from putting on a great show. So I know there are a lot of, people that worry about the cameras that they have access to, but one of the things that I always want to remind people is that sound is half of the battle here. So a lot of people are like, yes, I have an iPhone, but I really want to upgrade to some sort of a DSLR. I want, I'm worried about my video quality. Well, I would suggest that you should worry more about your audio quality, right? Find ways to get your mics on actors so that you get better audio quality, right? And yes, it's tough when you have kids with masks on, right? Doing these productions. I know Aaron had shared the other day a very interesting hack that perhaps he can share with everyone about sort of slipping lavs in with masks on. But again, we are a creative industry, and the creativity does not end at the writing. It does not end at the directing. It does not end at the acting. It carries through to the production of these things, right? And I think that the best producers of art, be it film or theater or anything, are people that are creative in their problem solving, right? It is not being deterred by the limitations you have. You don't have access to, a 5-ton grip truck of lighting. Your local hardware store is your best friend. Go get some work lights. They cost $5. The best DPs in the world are making stuff in their garage to use. There's a DP who I talk about a lot, Shane Hurlbut, who on $1 million movies, he has a 2x4 and he puts a strip of 10 flood light bulbs in. You were talking about something that for $100 at Home Depot and a drill in your garage you can put together and makes you a beautiful key light to use. So it is thinking outside the box. When I first was making stuff before I was doing it professionally, I wanted a camera slider so I could have nice dolly moves. I went to Home Depot. I bought some like some electrical channels and a skateboard and sawed it together and made myself a little dolly track and drilled up through the skateboard and put a fluid head on there, and all of a sudden had myself a nice little 6-foot dolly. So it is, it can be intimidating to feel like you do not have the tools, because unfortunately, so many of our arts institutions in this country do not have the funding and support that they should have. But if you take the creativity into everything that you do in the creation of your art, you will find ways to be innovative. And the internet is really there to help you find all of those special tricks of the trade.
So Tyler, just real quick before I ask Aaron for his mask fix, if you were to invest in one new piece of technology related to lighting or sound, what would that be?
Look, I am hesitant to name one because again, I want to say that first and foremost, it depends on the story you're telling. So if you are telling a story that really requires shallow depth of field because you want to feel like your actor is isolated from then maybe the best thing for you is a camera with an, interchangeable lens so that you can get a really long zoom lens or a really fast lens that will allow you to have depth of field where your iPhone is just everything is in focus, right? Maybe your show is really based on, the audio is really important for you. I would tend to say that to folks that do not have a ton of resources, invest in audio first, sound second, picture third, right? That is really where it's at. So many of the problems that people have with their picture are also things that if you are not doing something live, if you are shooting something to then release at a later date and you're going to run it through post-production, there are so many tools that you can access in post-production to fix imperfect picture, right? And again, there are, you can go out DaVinci Resolve, which is the color grading suite that we use in the professional world. They offer for free a version of it that has 95% of the tools that we use. So sure, your camera may make your skin tones look like you are an alien, but that is something that for free, you go online and you learn how to use DaVinci. With the computer that you own, you can go and do a really nice professional color grade on that footage to solve a lot of your camera problems. It's much more difficult with the audio. So I would invest in your audio. Good mics are not that expensive these days. I would also say, think about redundancy, especially if you're doing stuff live. So especially if you're doing stuff with kids and you're going to have lavs on kids and they're wireless and you've got a lot of wireless stuff going on and you've got a lot of rustle, make sure that you have a boom mic or two that is capturing redundancy so that you always have a backup, because that is such a big part of the film world, is covering your bases in that way.
Hey, Ty, let me, I want to, so it feels like there's two constituencies on this call, and I want to make sure that both get served equally. And there's one constituency that are I'm just reading through chat and through Q&A, that are what are all the tools that we can use? And great, where do I download that free version of DaVinci? And Aaron, what are all the cameras you're using? And then there's this other constituency that's what on the name of God screen earth are you guys talking about? And how do I even get my theater out there? And Candy, sorry, I deleted your question, Candy. Thank you for putting it in chat. Candy asked a question that I think is really important, which is I'm watching all of this theater that is being delivered streaming, and I'm using air quotes because I'm a jerk and opinionated, and it's low quality, and it maybe doesn't live up to the brand of what that organization is really delivering as an experience. And is that better? Is any theater better than no theater? Somebody else, I think it might have been Jake, put a thing in Q&A earlier saying somebody had said theater's supposed to be engaged in live. Here's what I would say. There will never be anything that will replace the energy of being in a room live, watching incredible theater being created in front of you in the moment. It's the reason we're all here. However, if somebody told me, you can never eat a delicious hamburger again, they're no longer available. And that could be because cows were extinct, or it could be because I lived somewhere where there was no hamburgers or no hamburger stores. I would not then say, well, I'll choose to starve to death. Since I can't get my hand on a great hamburger, I'm just going to die. That would not be my choice. So do I think that we'll ever get to a point where streaming theater at the educational level, like, do I think we can get to the point where at a multi-million-dollar live capture level that we can deliver a Broadway style experience through camera movement and fluidity and shot planning and audio engineering? And yeah, I think we can actually get to the point where there's a pretty good proxy for live theater. The energy is different, but you have to recreate the energy. Do I think that like a simple community organization can get to the point where their stream is the equivalent of being in the room? No, I don't. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is like, there will always be, and this is not a COVID thing, there will always be people who can't get into the room. There will be people who are busy on Saturday. There will be people who can't leave because of COVID. There will be people who can't buy a ticket because you're sold out because your fucking program is crushing it. Oh, I'm not supposed to talk like that. All right, I'm gonna get a naughty text message now. Your flipping program can't accommodate them. You're sold out. And there's going to be people that are on chemo and 2 states away and love their grandchild, but can't get to that theater because it's at risk for them. And I think the key is what we're suggesting is everybody deserves the right to engage in theater. And so we're not really talking about permanently creating this alternative for being in a room. We all want everybody in the room. I don't want to do Broadway theater with an empty room. Nobody does. However, if you were like, Hunter, you can take, I'll use a show of mine. On Hadestown, we have 931 seats, including standing room only. Also, by the way, our cheapest ticket is $30, and that's if you win the lottery and go to standing room. I have to acknowledge that there are people for whom that's not okay. They can't get to New York. They maybe are from New York, but $30, or they work nights. They can't get there at 8 p.m. and the matinee is in the, like, why should those people not have access to my product? Why should those people not be able to experience that storytelling? There is no reason. So what we're saying is like right now, today in time, COVID is prohibiting almost everybody from experiencing theater. So yes, to some degree right now, some theater is better than no theater. Any theater is better than no theater. We're not saying don't try. Again, like you don't have to become Aaron. You don't have to be like, I'm doing a show that's based in 1980, so I'm running it through an Apple IIc, and like he's going to do that shit, and he should do that shit because it's incredible and the outcome is amazing. But like we don't all have to aspire to that level of artistry. We can just be like, how do we provide access to our community to the things that matter to us? And how do we make sure that there's nobody that is priced out, locked out, or located out of experiencing theater? And that's what we're asking you to do on this call, is just open your hearts and your minds and your technology and your product to being like, on what level can I create that? Now, I would be super delighted if everybody on this call was like, I can go to the local pawn shops and find technology, like I'm super into it and I'm going to be in Google chat groups and on Reddit subgroups and like I'm going to learn everything about technology. But we're not crazy. We don't think, I'm like, get one kid with an iPhone, get one performer with an iPhone, get somebody who works in the box office or build set with an iPhone, and learn how to get your product out there. Yes, it is better than having an inaccessible product, and it certainly is better than raising the white flag, which is a thing that our community has never ever done. It is certainly better than raising the white flag and being like, well, I guess theater can just take a break until. And it's certainly better than being like, I have this story that we're telling that is deeply material and personal and necessary, but somebody that is homebound can't access it. And we can use this moment to change that paradigm and to say theater will always be accessible. Or we can just go bury our heads in the sand and say, well, let's hope this COVID thing blows over and we just go back to exactly how it was. But I think that would be a missed opportunity. Aaron, I would love to hear your take on that. Like, for somebody who's been pushing this sort of digital accessibility for years, like, What
Yeah.
would it mean to you if everybody just like after COVID was like, forget it, let's get back to just watching theater in a room?
Well, I mean, so here's the thing. I was getting really excited about the opportunity to like argue with you there for a second. I'm here for that. That's what I'm psyched for. I think it's great to think about that piece, all right? Like, how do we maintain it, and the accessibility? That's huge. But one of the things I want to like just pivot off of what you were saying is you were talking about how do we get our product out there? And at the end of the day, for those of us who are in educational theater, the product is not the point. And if the product is the point, forgive me, I think you're doing it wrong. The process is the point, in the room with the kids. And if you can't be in the room, as we can't be in the room, it does not matter what the show looks like. It doesn't matter if you have cool toys or weird toys, or if you're a nerd who doesn't like to sleep and likes to think about how to connect things that don't seem like filmmaking gear to a computer. Like, that's not the point, right? We turn on our ghost light at the end of every rehearsal, and we have like a little meditative moment where we talk about what work somebody did that was really good that day. If your school is operating on Zoom, do a digital ghost light. It doesn't matter what your show looks like. It matters that your kids connect, and it matters that like that's where we're working, right? And I would argue that probably all the way up through, with all the like, talk to the Hadestown cast. Would they want to get in the room and sing together if nobody was watching? Probably so, for a little while, right? Like, there's some stuff that the artist wants to make art. So I think that as we stay process focused, that's key. And for me, I'm super lucky. That process actually led to a really great product development piece, right? And that's specifically like, it's a beautiful confluence here. When we're talking about like audio and sound, I want to like piggyback right into that. I have a really functional hack for that. I don't know if you guys have these things to put inside your masks, but I wear, like, you put it inside your mask and it keeps it off your face. I ordered this because when I was teaching, I was constantly like sucking mask, and there's my bell. Great. I was constantly sucking mask, and it made it hard to operate. So I got one of these. I realized that what that did was it pushed the mask off my face. And so then, working with one of my students who's our like sound guy, who's over there putzing around on the soundboard right now, we came up with this idea that with like the simplest lav mic we have, you clip it inside the thing, and then you put a mask around the outside of it, and it is held off of your performer's face. It is held in a consistent and permanent distance from their mouth, and there is no rubbing of the fabric. Now, because we were doing that and we knew we had to be in masks for rehearsal and for performance, we had a guy who teaches, as I said, I'm at a Catholic school. One of our religion teachers, as like a COVID hobby, taught himself to sew. So he made us costume masks so we could shoot in like super close up. And there's the guy who's playing the psychiatrist in the play. Now, we're able to then pull out audio that is honestly better quality in a lot of ways than I've ever had in my room, because it let an actor who I've taught to project and can project, it let him be intimate in his sound, and we could capture it, and it was awesome, right? Like, that kind of stuff. It was about the process of being like, yo, kids, how do we figure this out? How do we build it better? And I do care that the product was good, but I am way more interested in the fact that like Michael at the soundboard helped develop a thing that has now changed how we're doing theater in my room, right? And it's not going to go back.
Aaron, I'm gonna make you be super granular. Tina, wait, hold on one second. Can we get super granular? Aaron, what is that mask insert? Like, where did you get it? What does it cost? How easy is it to use?
It's so there's a couple ways to do this. The easiest way is to go onto your Amazon account and look for mask bracket. And there are thousands of different versions of them in different shapes. This shape worked great for us because it has a lot of pieces to clip onto that, depending on like the shape of your actor's face, different spots will be more functional for the mic. I just bought 30 of them for $12. Yeah, this one is made of like neoprene. It's squishy. But we also, there are people who are 3D printing them and they're rigid, and those are less comfortable to wear, but more functional. And so if you're somebody who has like a STEM department, you get that teacher to do it for you, and it costs nothing. If you don't have access to that, Google mask bracket, and like everyone in the world is selling them.
And I'm just going to finish that with saying, like, first of all, Ryan, I hope you're listening. We're going to have OTS branded mask brackets going out to the people on this call, but that might take us a few weeks to get done. So in the meantime, if you can't afford 30 mask brackets for $12, just send me an email at hunter@tbdtheatricals.com, and we will send you 30 mask brackets for $12 because
Like
there's
working with
anybody
Oprah.
on this call that can't
You
create.
get a mask, you get a bracket. So this is to all of you, but since you're still on, Aaron, I want to poke at you a little bit about, I sat in on a really great webinar with the a bunch of artists at CTG, Center Theater Group in Los Angeles. And one of the great questions they asked was, how can these streamed or video on demand performances be enhanced or different or better than live? Like, what can you do that is something that you don't usually do with a live performance, vis-a-vis talkbacks and chat rooms and that sort of thing?
I mean, talkbacks and chat rooms, like that's that's one of the best ways.
Yeah, let's talk about
it. It's been a thing as we've been trying to find ways for our kids to feel more involved in the traditional process. We always have a opening night cast, crew, and staff Q&A, post-show thing. Like that's a tradition that we have. So it was really important to us to, when we went virtual, to have that also, right? So it was really easy for us to have a Zoom-based Q&A at a specific time after our show. That people got into, and it gave the kids a chance to sort of have the, share their excitement around the product that they just watched. We weren't live, we taped it and then we streamed it. So it was like they all had watched it independently and then got back together. It was really exciting for them. And then it also let us feel that little bit of normal, that like we do have like somebody's mom asks a question about what was hard to work on, and the kids go kind of down that path. And it was huge and super important. So like that piece is really great. One of the ways that that's actually then been enhanced by this is that we can start that earlier in the process. We can have like an open rehearsal where people can come in, check in, see where we're at. The first time we do like a full read through of a piece, if that's an open Zoom, we can make that available to families to see where we are. And that's been really exciting for them to see that earlier in the process. And even if they're just checking in for a few minutes, knowing that they can drop in and drop out, and it's not a performance and they're not watching a show, they're watching us at work on a show, has been really cool to pull back the curtain on that piece. And I would also say that another element that is something that we've been doing that is not something that we have ever done before, that I think we're actually going to probably stick with, is we've been integrating new layers of design. So like we're doing She Kills Monsters, as I said, and there's a lot of combat in that, right? I can stage fighting, I can do fight choreography, and that's fine. But what is really also interesting is we have a student who's like a super anime nerd and loves it, and has done anime sketches of all of our characters, and they're making little like 6-frame keyframe animatics on their iPad with it, right? And so now we have combat that I could never choreograph because I can't make people flip 16 times like it's anime. So utilizing real basic technology that this kid is doing anyway in their day. They draw pictures of anime characters flipping around on their notebook. Turning that into a little animatic is super easy, and changed our program because now we're going to have better choreography than I could do.
Tyler, you ready for a question?
Please.
And I know Hunter and Aaron will probably be able to weigh in as well, but for these pre-recorded productions, which I think most of you are more in favor of than the live production, because Wi-Fi happens, and as we've even seen on this call, lags happen and everything. But in terms of planning and rehearsing and shooting and all of that, what advice do you have for people just in terms of their production process?
Look, even before COVID, it was extremely important to plan. And in COVID times, as we now have to grapple with new technologies, it is even more important. I think the one of the key things to think about as we tackle a lot of this stuff is to try to think ahead and plan for the stupid things that are bound to happen. So the Wi-Fi dropouts that are bound to happen, if you can create schedules for yourselves so that you anticipate the dumb things that are going to happen, it then allows you the space for the fun, exciting mishaps that inevitably happen while we are making art to then not completely screw your production. So a huge part of it is just about scheduling, right? We want to be as ambitious as we can, but we want to understand our limitations. And you have to be real with yourself and real with the resources and time that you have. And so plan to rehearse. The way that you rehearse and the way that you do tech for your theatrical productions, you need to do the same thing for all of your camera and sound stuff, because things are going to break. And if you are doing it for the first time live on the day, it doesn't matter if you are doing this, with $1 or $1 million. We all are going to have those same problems. So, and the beauty is that it also gives you the chance to iterate, because the way that we make art better is through iteration. It does not fall off the truck perfect. You iterate with drafts of a script the same way that you iterate with figuring out your schedule and how you put things together. And scheduling is such a giant part of the game when it comes to film, right? One of the most important people on a film set is the first assistant director, who creates the schedule and creates, the plan for shooting every day. And a huge thing that I think a lot of people don't do when they are first starting out is put together a schedule that is essentially going to cover their ass for the horror that is sure to befall them at some point, which is to say, make sure that you get the coverage that you need. So if you are shooting something ahead of time, do not start with the special shot that you are most excited about, but that your production could absolutely live without. Make sure that you get your masters, that you get your coverage, and then, look at if Aaron's animation fell through at the last second, that is something that I'm sure you could cover by just shooting it on stage without the flipping, but having backup plans for your scheduling of things is such a key thing, no matter what level you're doing it at, because you're going to run into these little snags. So prepare for them.
Hey guys, I'm going to hop in here for a second, only because as bizarre as this is, I'm being noted by the local authorities that I'm late for a COVID test. So I have to hop off the call, but my contact info is in the chat. It's hunter@tbdtheatricals.com. I'm super grateful for all of you that were on this call. I'm going to leave it to the rest of the team to close this thing out, and we can continue chatting as long as this matters. But guys, it's our job to make theater happen. It's our job to figure out new ways. It's our job to create accessibility. That's what we do for a living. And I speak for myself and everybody else on this call where I say, lean on us, let us know. I'll just say for the on-stage team as a whole, if you have any questions, if you need any help, if you need any technical support, put it in chat right now. One of our team members will get in touch with you. This is not about using us as a product. We don't care. We'd prefer, but we don't care. This is about us making sure that people are able to get their storytelling to the market, that they're able to support their programs. To Aaron's point, sometimes it's about the process, sometimes it's about the delivery. It depends on where you are in the world of theater. But theater can't just take a rest on its laurels. Just because the world's made it a little hard for us, that doesn't mean it's okay for us to not do it. And after this thing comes back, it's our job to make sure that it comes back more accessibly, more effectively, more open, and that we have more ability to affect the people that participate in it. And whether that means as a crew member, as a cast member, as an audience member, technology can enable that. So I challenge you, if you think you can't do it, if you're intimidated by it, I can't set the clock on my microwave. Reach out, ask for help. That's what we're here for. So stick it in chat, let somebody reach out to you. We're here for you. Thank you all for making theater. We appreciate you. I'll give it back to the team here for a minute while I go get my brain tickled. But until next time, I'll see you guys. Take care, guys.
So I will turn to you, Aaron and Tyler, in our all the planning that we did for this, which of course never turns out exactly the way we think it will, because we get off on passion tangents and things like that. In our discussions, was there anything that we talked about that you feel strongly you would still like to share? I don't think I heard you say the word test, Tyler. And I believe you said that about 50 times.
Yeah.
Could you just say test many times and why?
Test everything, it is, again, it does not matter at what level you are creating things, you have to test them. So there is no amount of testing that I have ever regretted, we spend a lot of money in the professional world setting aside lots and lots of time. I mean, that is one of the biggest differences, I think, between professional productions and more amateur productions, is just the prep work that goes into them, because we have the assets to spend that time. But if you are given the opportunity to build that time into your schedule, you know, being proactive and trying everything out is incredibly important. And again, it's not only important for the technical side to say, oh, this mic placement needs to move, right? So that Aaron is trying every different slot in that mask bracket to find the exact right spot on each actor's face, right? But it's also important for the creative side, because for people who are now becoming filmmakers for the first time, when you are running those tests to check all of your technology is working, it also gives you a shot to move the camera that you have and to see how it affects the experience of watching that story, right? So, you know, take those opportunities to put on your creative hat and your storyteller hat and try things out. And that's how you are going to learn things. That's how you're going to learn to be better storytellers, is by trying things that don't work and falling flat on your face and getting back up and trying again.
Hey, Aaron, did you have, I know if you have something you want to add, but also I know you shared with us a couple of pretty big mishaps that have occurred in some of your shows, and any quick you know, tidbits you can share with us about this works better than that, or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, so I just, a couple of quick ones came up in the chat that are just quick one-off answers. Yes, I use OBS. It's been real helpful, but we have not used it all the time, so it's not a requirement. It's great, but it's not the only way to do it. In terms of like pieces that haven't come up in the conversation / mishaps, one of the most important things, at least for us in this process, has been really trying to let go of like the leadership style ego that comes with theater making. No one has an expectation when you go see the JV baseball team play that you're going to be watching the Dodgers win the World Series. Those are two separate experiences. And no one has the expectation when they come to see your 10th grade, you know, play, that it be Broadway. And if you can let go and forgive yourself for like the reality of your situation and make stuff that is really functional for you at that level, you will be successful. Right. One of the reasons why communities are clamoring to get sports back for kids is because it's not because they want to watch the competition or they need to win a championship that year. It's because the kids need the outlet. So it's been really important to connect to, like, it is fine for the thing to suck if it sucks in a better way than last time. Last spring, we tried to do Shakespeare in Love. We shot probably 90% of it by recording Zoom windows. And then we had a kid who got sick, and then his family went away to like their other place. I don't know, they live elsewhere, and he lost internet, and we couldn't do the show because we lost it. But the kids all had the rehearsal process. They all had the togetherness of it. We watched our incomplete product together on a Zoom, and they were really sad. But you know what? Part of our job as educators is to encounter kids when they're really sad and help them like through that piece. And that's fully a legitimate piece of theatrical experience. And I think it's important to let go of the idea that we will be judged as artists or as makers or as teachers if our product is imperfect. The imperfection is the most fun part. The prop that breaks, that the kid figures out how to solve the problem on stage. We love those moments. And we can find the way to love them in the technology, right? We had a kid on our production of The Incident at Vichy, which is what we just did in the fall. That's what these masks were for. We had a kid who completely forgot his lines, but he said into his mask mic, and we were able to hear it, "I don't know what I'm saying, but I know that I'm supposed to move to the right now. Can we use the time from when I did it right and use that audio instead of this one, and I get to my spot?" And yeah, you know what, we could, because we couldn't see his mouth because he was behind a mask. And that mistake was so delightful. I know it's so hard, and it's been something I've really struggled with personally about how to find like the joy in the work in these weird times. And the answer has really been to like connect to what the real point is And that has been, it's really served me personally. And I recognize that there's huge luck in my circumstance. And we are, you know, we had been working on figuring out how to stream using, and like, I hate the like plug piece of this, but like we wanted to stream using the on the stage because that was our box office vendor. We've been trying to figure it out since last fall, and then COVID happened and it had to happen, right? And it's really lucky that it all lined up in a way that we could look like we know what we're doing, but it's all just tap dancing. Right? Like Tyler said, like none of us actually know what we're doing, and connecting to that and disconnecting the ego of having to be like the sage at the front of the room is huge.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm so proud of you. Aaron's a former student of mine, so I got to brag on him a little bit. Listen, guys, we know that a lot of you have very specific questions. Some of you are disappointed that we did not do a B, C, D, manual of how to do this, and how it's really impossible to do because you're all dealing with different, circumstances, different age groups, different equipment. But I'm going to repeat what Hunter has already said and Aaron has already said, and you're seeing it in the chat. Just let us know the specific question you want answered. Give us the details of the equipment you're using, and somebody will get back to you with an answer. You can see Tyler and Aaron are doing their best to answer you. We'll have a transcript of this. So if we're able to contact you, then we'll be able to answer. But thanks so much for being here with us. Focus on what's important. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully we'll be taking really great advancements from this whole debacle with us into a better world and better theater. So thanks so much. We're going to sign off for now, and have a great day.
Keep making stuff, everybody.